That's why we do it. Also, once you've actually finished a novel and you're going to the dreaded pitch meeting or writing a query letter, it comes in handy to be able to say what it's about. Now, this is not an elevator pitch. That usually is something that tempts us more of a sales pitch. Thank you for all being here today. I appreciate your coming on Thanksgiving week. Did everybody see their videos on YouTube? And
I did look.
I thought you were awesome, Melanie. You were
I need self-tanner or something. I don't know why I look so pale.
So I thought everybody was outstanding, and you get a better sense of how this is going to go in the future, where we'll have a little introductory something or other, and then we'll go into each individual analysis. I'm going to give you a heads up so you have about 10 minutes of warning time. I will be asking each of you to start the section of feedback that's for you with an MCS. I'm not hearing those groans.
We're all trying to do them in our head now really fast.
Right. It's like, wait a minute. Now you're zoning out completely and will not hear anything I have to say. But I wanted to talk today in the beginning a little bit about what we do here at Bardsy and how it's different from maybe other groups that you've been in, other courses that you might have taken, or directed writing groups professionally like this that you might have been involved with. So our goal here has been always to provide tools for serious writers, not to tell them this is how you have to write, or this is the style you have to write in, or your writing has to look like my writing, but rather, is your writing working for readers? Okay, that's what we want you to know. That's what we do for each other. So we have an approach that includes several different things. We have a methodology that we've created, which is our Bardsy methodology, which is, last time I'd shown you the publishability index and all the different dimensions of good writing that we had researched extensively and for years that seem to be universal across time and place. And those are things to be looking for in your writing and really trying to approach with a critical eye occasionally as you are working. So that's one tool. Another tool is our minimum complete story, which is an agonizing tool for our writers, and I'll explain why in a minute, but it's also an incredibly helpful tool. I might even try and do my own today just to make you feel less alone in this endeavor. So we'll see if we have time. And that is a way, I'll get into this more in a minute, but a way that we ask writers to recite what they're working on, what their story from a bird's eye view looks like with all the critical pieces in place. We don't want you to editorialize. We don't want you to say, describe things in detail, but to give us sort of that bird's eye view. And I'll give you an example in a few minutes of your story. And here's the trick in 90 seconds or less. Why do we do this? The reason we do this is because we all start with a vision for a story. Everybody is writing for a reason. That vision could be that you want to be seen as a writer. That vision could be for yourself as a successful writer making millions and millions of dollars. It could be that you have something important to say, or that you are fascinated with something and you want to share your enthusiasm for that subject with other people. It could be that you just like to entertain people and you want to give them a good story, or scare the pants off of them, or stimulate them in some other way. So there are various reasons that we write, and each of us has a vision that we approach our novel writing with. So I am momentarily going to ask our wonderful group what their vision for their novels is. But first, I will ask them an easier question, just to introduce themselves, starting with Pam, and also to tell us a book that you've read recently, or even a movie or a great TV series that you've seen recently that you've loved, and in maybe a sentence or two, why. Go ahead, Pam.
Okay. What I forgot what I'm supposed to start with.
Name, rank, and serial number.
My name is Pamela Raleigh. I'm in Florida, Sarasota, Florida. The I'm trying to think of a book. I am reading a book currently that I heard several people recommend. So I'm not very far into it, but it seems to be pretty good. I don't know if anyone's read it. It's called Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. And it carries 3 protagonists from 3 different time periods that I'm assuming will somehow link up. They haven't yet, but their stories are pretty captivating, even individually. So it's holding my attention. I'm not sure where it's going, but I'm willing to keep going. So,
okay, excellent. Thank you. And how about you, Alex? Where are you calling in from? Favorite book recently?
Hi, I'm Alex Vuilleumier. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and recent book, I just restarted Anna Karenina, which is blowing me away all over again. Anyway. But honestly, the one that really marked me recently was it was called The Perfume by Patrick Suskind, I think his name is. It's a weird book, but the sensory details of smell are throughout the whole thing, and it's fascinating just to read. Somebody focus their entire novel on a sense that's largely ignored, and it was really great just for that.
It's interesting. It's interesting that it's so largely ignored in writing because it is our most acute trigger for memory, isn't it?
Yeah, and emotion. Yeah.
And emotion. I mean, Pam, I know that you've made some pumpkin bread recently for Thanksgiving, and whenever I smell something like that, it triggers wonderful feelings at the holidays for me. And these things are ways that we can manipulate or move our audience. And when I say manipulate, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean, really get them to feel what we want them to feel, which of course is a big part of storytelling. So excellent. How about you, Stacey?
Hi, I'm Stacey Campbell, and sorry, I just lost the window. I don't know where you went. But I am
We're in the void.
That's right. I'm in Colorado, and to kind of keep the highbrow literary theme going here, I've been reading the Murderbot Diaries series, which is it's not highbrow at all. It's a series that has actually recently been made into an Apple Plus series. It's a sci-fi series, and there's 8 or 10 books in the series about a mercenary humanoid robot that becomes sentient. So it's an interesting read.
Is that I don't know the series. Is that very, very recent?
I think she is still writing the series, maybe. I'm not really sure. I think there's 8 books in this series. She's apparently written a ton of sci-fi and fantasy. I'm just not familiar with it. But I think she is still coming out with one in 26, if I remember looking at that.
Reality is moving so quickly that often science fiction from even 5 or 10 years ago is a norm now that we're not even thinking about. So yeah. I was just curious if it was really contemporary or not. But the bottom line is, even with something like science fiction, the underpinnings of it, rather than the technical parts of it, should be so fundamentally sound that even if the technology has advanced beyond what was speculated about in the book, it should work. And it sounds like this does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the series dropped over the summer, I think. So it's worth checking out.
Great, thank you. How about you, Melany?
Melany Nitzsche, joining you from St. Louis. So Alex had recommended a really good comp for me a while back, Jane Smiley as an author. So I just finished reading 1,000 Acres, which is not a recent book, but but it was like the perfect comp for me. So thank you, Alex. Another benefit of this great writing group. It really describes perfectly a Midwestern farm town and what people are concerned about and not concerned about. And then on top of it are all these shocking revelations about this small town life that you would not expect. So it was a really good comp just from the setting for me. So thank you, Alex.
Interesting. Okay. And you'll understand later why I'm asking you that.
It's really interesting, I promise. I know that doesn't sound like an
No.
interesting
I'm sure it is, but it ties into what I'm going to talk with you about later. So thank you for that. I'm reading a book, and it's embarrassing, the name of the author I have forgotten temporarily. Of course, this is my life. My brain is a sieve. But the book is called In Other Words, and it's written by an American author who has won the Pulitzer in the past, and she is by profession a translator. And she wrote a book in both English and Italian on the nature of learning a second language. And so on one side of a spread, you've got the English, and on the other, you have the Italian for it, and you go back and forth. And it's really wonderful because it gets down into this sort of a micro concept of language that we don't think about often. So I highly recommend it. It's I'll get the name by the end of our time together today, or we'll put it on the notes at the end of the YouTube video. Anyways, we talked a little bit about the minimum complete story, and I wanted to add a little bit more to the subject. I'm going to just go through a few of our very beautifully put together slides. So if you'll hold on a minute, it might just take me a second to get them going. Be patient with me. All right. There we go. Does that look right to you? Good. So the minimum complete story. We've talked about this, and I mentioned it's a bird's eye view of your complete story based on the vision that you have for your writing, for your book. It's really very simple, and yet nothing could be left out of this in terms of your beginning, your middle, and your end, your characters, the backstory, the inciting incident, the climax, the resolution. They're all jammed into 90 seconds. And the reason to have something like this is so that you don't get lost as you're writing. There's a very delicate balance when you're writing between letting your creativity go wild and also having discipline enough to finish a story. It's very difficult to do them both. And often, especially when you're beginning to write something as ambitious as a novel, it can be almost impossible. And I will tell you that my whole career trajectory was based off the fact that I wrote over 1,000 pages of a novel without getting to the inciting incident, and then decided to switch tracks midstream. And I actually started my professional career in children's books because I was in my own personal writing group. And after about 3 years of presenting this endless Elizabethan novel with no narrative arc, one of my cohorts in the group, who was a very successful children's book author, said to me, Celeste, have you ever thought about writing a children's book? They're only 32 pages. And I said, yeah. Anyway, I did write the book, ended up being 48 pages, which is another story, but still, it took a long time to understand how that narrative is supposed to come together, how all those basic elements are supposed to cohere. And as we create our MCS, or minimum complete stories, in the beginning, it's often very awkward, difficult, a challenge. We're fighting with ourselves, but eventually we begin to see how all these disparate parts begin to coalesce. It gets very exciting. And then if we happen to go off on a tangent, either we can rein ourselves back in by looking at that MCS and going, wait a minute, that's not where I meant to be. And if I do this, this is going to happen, and there's a ripple effect. Or you say, you know what, this is much more compelling than what I had initially. And then you go back into your MCS and you say, how do I need to change this so that I don't lose everything that I've been doing? But so it becomes connected with this new limb of my story in a way that's more meaningful and compelling than the original thought. That's why we do it. Also, once you've actually finished a novel and you're going to the dreaded pitch meeting or writing a query letter, it comes in handy to be able to say what it's about. Now, this is not an elevator pitch. That usually is something that tempts us. It's more of a sales pitch. This is more, for example, the story of Cinderella, where once upon a time in a generic European village in the 18th century, there was a young woman who was orphaned at a very early age and lived in a castle with her stepmother and stepsisters. You get the idea. Very, very basic. And then you move forward through all of the things that happen. The inciting incident with Cinderella happens to be when the king decides to give a ball for his son who he wants to marry off, and all the eligible maidens in the land are invited, which means that her stepmother can't prevent her from going. However, the stepmother is not happy about her going because she's beautiful and wonderful and kind, and she will steal the thunder from the stepmother's daughters. So she puts a series of challenges in her way. Anyway, this is what that begins to look like. That is the beginning of Cinderella. That is what an MCS looks like. You know the rest of the story, and I think at this point you could probably tell that MCS. But so it distills your story to the essentials. It allows you to change directions when you have something more compelling and foundational that you want to do. And it helps you to have a dynamic where you are always in a position to assess your work on the fly and make sure that you're not going hopelessly off track. So as I was demonstrating with Cinderella, a good way to do that is to start with the world and your main characters, the protagonists, central characters, then adding that inciting incident, and then building that conflict up until you reach that apex or climax of the story, and then the resolution. So let's take another look here. Here's another example. This is Romeo and Juliet. So Stacey, would you read this example for us? You're muted.
I just saw that. Thank you. Once in Renaissance Italy, Romeo, a headstrong teen, falls helplessly in love with Juliet, but their families are rivals, worn enemies. As romance unfolds, friends and cousins kill. They weary of the conflict, commit to love, and craft a plan. Mistakes lead to suicides, leaving families to mourn.
Okay, thank you. And I want to add that they probably were worn, but they're also sworn. So that's a typo on my part. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for reading that. Again, this really, if any one of these pieces of information was to be pulled away from the story, it wouldn't hold together. And that's why it's important to include each of these. Anyway, that's a bare bones explanation of the minimal complete story. There are blogs on this on our site. And we also have a resident expert, Pam Raleigh, who happens to be here. Yes, you, Pam, who actually just did a YouTube presentation on the minimum complete story. So did I miss anything really vital? She's not going to say a word.
nailed it. The important stuff was there. Absolutely.
Okay. And yet you managed to be fresh and illuminating for about an hour and a half. So I'm sure I missed something. Okay.
Bardsy delivers the tools, guidance, and support you need to produce compelling novels. Our well-researched and thoroughly tested approach includes our minimum complete story, a 90-second exercise that keeps your writing on track while fueling creativity. Bardsy Publishability Index, a 23-dimension checklist that offers attainable goals and provides actionable feedback. And our brand new comprehensive character developer that helps you construct unforgettable characters. Come see for yourself at Bardsy.com today. Try our workshop or enter our first chapter contest. Then, when you're ready, Elite membership delivers writing groups, personal coaching, and a curated community. With Bardsy, your work will captivate everyone, from agents to publishers, and, most importantly, your readers.